Hello and welcome on my website. I wanted to record a very short video on chart calculations to sort of give a bit of an idea to people who are new to the website on how to use it. So for chart calculations, you have a bunch of possibilities that you can go through. The first one that I'm going to look at now is the natal chart. So, if you're relatively new to astrology, I know when I just started to get into astrology, I started to look at websites that calculated and interpreted my chart automatically online. I wanted to know before anything as much as I can about my own chart. And I think that's very useful if you have any interest in astrology at all. And especially if you have any interest in seeing an astrologer, having a consultation with an astrologer, it'd be good to get an idea about your chart beforehand, to know, which sign your Mercury is in, which house it is in, or your moon, or, you need to know where your ascendant is. Well, you don't need to, but it would be very useful for you to know those things. So let's say that you go on my website and you want to get an interpretation for your natal chart. If you put your name there, my name is Alex, so I'll just add that. We're gonna go with the 1900s, the default date and the default time. But should you need to change it, today's date is 2026. It's July and the 12th. If we look at the time, now it's 8:55. 8 and 55 p.m. and we are in London. I need to find a way to disable the autofill from Safari. And now we calculate the chart. So the first thing that you're going to get is the chart wheel. I'm doing mainly Western astrology. I'm doing modern psychological Western astrology and traditional astrology from the Hellenistic era. And that means that I'm going to pretty much always use tropical zodiac. And the house system that I'm using in my practice is the whole sign house system. I don't really go with Placidus, even though I started to study psychological astrology and everybody was using Placidus. I got much better results in predictions and in looking at people's lives and in elections and, in pretty much all forms of astrology that I practice. I got much better results by using whole sign houses, and this is what I use for my charts. So this chart will, everything on this website is programmed by me. My other job is a software developer. So I have the privilege to build my own tools to do astrology with, which is great. And the way that I do aspects, the way that I do houses, everything, it is done by me. I fix the ascendant and the descendant line to always be horizontal. The midheaven is a floating point. It's not the cusp of the 10th house because we are using whole sign houses. And you have the 7 traditional planets because in an actual reading, if I'm going to read a chart or do a consultation with you, I usually use an existing software such as AstroGold or SolarFire, most likely AstroGold, and I am looking at all planets, including Neptune, Uranus, Pluto. But for information and educational purposes only, this website is only going to show the 7 traditional planets and the lunar nodes. So Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Chiron, asteroids, anything like that, they are not present here. Later, you're going to have a natal aspectarian. I'm only showing Ptolemaic aspects. I'm only showing the conjunction, the sextile, the square, the trine, and the opposition. We can see between the Mercury and the Sun, we have a conjunction. It's within 0 degrees in 22 minutes and it's applying. That means they're getting closer and closer to each other, right? The Sun and Mercury, they're in the seventh whole sign house in Cancer. Mercury is at 20 degrees and 51 minutes retrograde in Cancer. The Sun is at 20 degrees and 28 minutes in Cancer as well. The Sun never goes retrograde. This conjunction is actually called the Cazimi because they are so close. They're within less than a degree together. I know some people use Cazimi for less than 17 minutes together, an applying aspect within 7 minutes or 17 minutes of arc, or a separating aspect within 17 minutes of arc. But I prefer to use the 1 degree notation. 17 minutes seems somewhat arbitrary. I'm not too sure where that's coming from. Why 17 and not 18? I never really found any rationale that sounded convincing behind that, so I just go with the 1 degree orb, and the closer the planet is to the heart of the Sun, the better. Because we do know that while planets in conjunction with the Sun, they're not very good because they don't have their own light. They're not very strong. They're considered weakened. If they are in the very heart of the Sun, so within less than a degree away from the Sun, their condition is improved. But that's beside the point. So if you do want to have a look at your chart, you use a natal chart reading on the website. You can always have a look at your chart. You can feel welcome to print this. If you're going to print this webpage, you can save it as a PDF on your laptop, and you can have your chart. Use a printer to print it. Have a look at it. Try to digest it, and in the same way, have a look at your chart positions. So in case you don't really know what any of these glyphs mean, the glyph for Jupiter with its name is right there. The glyph for Chiron with its name is right there, even though I don't interpret it. I'm still telling you where Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron are. I don't really add interpretation for the true node and the south node. They might come at a later time, but right now they're not there. The position by sign is given. So, for the Sun, we said it's 20 degrees, 28 minutes in Cancer, in the 7th house. Another useful table, element and mode distribution. If you want to know how many fire planets you have, earth planets, air planets. I count the ascendant and the midheaven in the element and mode distribution because people who don't have any planets in fire, but they have a fire ascendant, such as a Leo ascendant, they will still have very fiery personality, or a Sagittarius ascendant. They're still going to be quite, optimistic, exciting, like fiery people are very charming. They have a lot of fire within them, their personality, their body is governed by a fire sign still, so I do consider the ascendant. And the midheaven is pretty much like an ascendant, but for work and for things that you do in public. Your personality at work, if you have a corporate job, let's say, the way that you behave at work, that's much more given by your midheaven, your public persona, your personality in public, right? So I do include it there. It's quite important. If you want to know how many cardinal, fixed, or mutable planets you have the count right there. So in this chart, we have 4 cardinal planets and 3 planets and 1 point, the ascendant, to be exact. For fixed, we have 2. We only have Jupiter and the midheaven. For mutable, we only have 3, the Moon, Mars, and Venus. So this chart is predominantly cardinal. Cardinal signs, they like goals, they like to have something to shoot for, they like to start things. They are very good at getting things going, getting people excited to move forward, to shoot for something, they need a direction. you can already tell a lot about a person based on how many cardinal planets or fixed or mutable they have. Um, this chart is pretty well balanced, I guess. We don't have a lot of fixed planets, only Jupiter in the midheaven. Um, a fixed planet will give you some staying power. Fixed signs are the most likely ones to see things through all the way to the end. I think some astrologers have the tendency to say that cardinal signs are only good for beginning things, and fixed signs are only good for maintaining things as they are, and mutable signs are good for finishing things or ending things or tidying things up. I'm not too sure that's true. It could be. Cardinal signs are great at starting things. Fixed signs, I think, are very good at starting things and seeing things and projects all the way through the end. So a fixed sign is quite good, but they don't really do well with change. If you change their direction drastically or too much, they can get very frustrated and uncomfortable. So they like to be able to be on projects from start to finish and do them well. Mutable signs, they're much more comfortable with change. Obviously, it depends which planet is mutable, so you know which area of your life you're comfortable being mutable in. If Venus is in the 11th house and it's a mutable earth sign, well, the mutable earth sign is the least changeable. But let's get a moon, for example. The moon, let's say the moon is right now it's in Gemini. If it was in the 11th house, maybe around the area of friendships and groups and like-minded people, maybe that's where you're really comfortable with change. That's an area where you do well with change. That's something you can gauge from the element and mode distribution. And for the polarity table, again, we have a pretty good distribution. I've only included this because I do have a feeling that people who have lots of planets in masculine signs, they tend to be more active, more type A personalities. They want to impose their will on the world. They want to change things. When something doesn't go according to plan, they are more comfortable getting up and changing direction, doing something about it. Whereas having a lot of feminine planets means that you are more comfortable allowing things to be in the way that they are. You're more comfortable by not taking action and just observing things move, allowing things to flow and move, and allowing things to be the way that they are. Neither one is better than the other. Both of them are actually necessary, and if you are all young, then you can run into trouble. It's not always good to just change things. You just might use a lot of energy for nothing. I have a very interesting example for this. Two friends of mine, one very masculine, one very feminine, and his personality types, one very yang, one very yin, were waiting for a train. The person that was very in was dealing with the delay of the train in a different way. They were just waiting for the train to come, even though the train seemed like you would not arrive on time or you would arrive a little bit late. But the person who was in, who was more feminine, more passive, wanted to wait for the train to come, and they felt like they do have enough time if the train comes at the time that it is scheduled. The young person, however, left the train station and chose a different route that took them as long to arrive there as it took for the in person to arrive there. In the end, they met in the same place around the same time. Neither of them was right, neither of them was wrong. The person who left could have run into more trouble, could have run into traffic, they could have run into another train that was delayed or some sort of issues, and the person who was staying there was risking not getting any train at all. Maybe that train would not come as scheduled either. There were already delays, so it's logical to assume that the train is not going to come. Well, is that correct? We don't really know. In this case, both of them followed their intuition and they were true and genuine to their way of being, and they both made it. But that's just an aside for how polarity kind of works in astrology. And for the natal interpretation, this is quite a long and generous section where you're going to have all your planets and sign interpreted. There's a very short paragraph that kind of gives you a summary. Then it looks, the sun in Cancer, the moon in Gemini, Mercury in Cancer, Venus in Virgo, Mars in Gemini, Jupiter in Leo, Saturn in Aries, and here is where we stop. The paragraphs are quite generous. There's quite a lot written. There's quite a lot summarized in there from psychological astrology, from traditional astrology, and what displacements mean for you personally. They're still quite general. I don't think an interpretation that's given by a computer is ever going to be anywhere near as good as an interpretation given by a human, because with an astrologer you work with a lot of feedback, you get a lot of background information, you know how to steer the consultation and the chart interpretation, whereas a computer is going to be quite fixed unless you can keep giving it prompts to change. Maybe AI is going to change that, we're going to see, but for now it's still not possible. Even with AI, the interpretations are still not very good, not to the level that a human can create them for you. You also can have a look at planets in the houses. As I said earlier, the sun is in the 7th house, the moon is in the 6th house. You get to know what that means, the less fortunate 6th house, which we know is about accidents and work and difficult conditions, about being a subordinate, being a worker. A lot of people don't like the 6th house. Mercury in the 7th house and what that means. Venus in the 9th house, the 9th house, the house that's also known as the house of temple work, of divination, of astrology, of religion, of philosophy, of higher education, of academia. What does Venus mean there? Is also the house of long distance travel, foreign cultures. I don't know if I've included all of those things there, but I've included as many as I could think of when these interpretations were written. Mars in the 6th house, Jupiter, Saturn, and then Saturn we are ending. We also look at planetary aspects. We look at the relationship between the sun and each of the other planets. So you have the sun conjunct Mercury, the sun square Saturn, and so on. You're going to go through all of the aspects. And here at the end, you have a disclaimer. This disclaimer is pretty long and it might get trimmed in the future. But if you have the patience to read through all of it, I'm pretty much just explaining that every effort is made for these chart interpretations to be as general and as applicable to you as possible. But obviously, a planet's condition can be heavily influenced by so many things. On the one hand, we have the outer planets like Neptune and Uranus and Pluto, but we also have fixed stars. If you have Venus in Virgo at 2 degrees of Virgo, for example, that is a Venus is in trouble. I think Venus is now at 3 degrees of Virgo, actually, so it's pretty close to that. So if you do happen to be born with Venus at 2 or 3 degrees of Virgo, that's a Venus that usually is said to be in trouble because the sign of its fall is Virgo. Usually Venus has a very high difficulty trying to signify the things that it signifies and trying to build relationships, trying to build romantic relationships, to find things that it finds pleasure in. Venus is about pleasure, things we do for enjoyment. It is about love relationships, people that we do love. So, finding people that you genuinely love, knowing what you genuinely love, enjoyment has a very hard time. You might have a very hard time with enjoyment if Venus is in Virgo at 2 degrees. Traditionally, however, in 2011, the star Regulus, the heart of the lion, progressed into Virgo, into the tropical zodiac of Virgo. And that changes the interpretation of a planet at the beginning of Virgo quite a lot. If a planet is within about 1 to 2 degrees of that star. Actually, the interpretation changes quite a lot. The Venus might still be difficult. You might still have difficulty with relationships, but Regulus is one of the four royal stars, and Regulus is known for giving. It can give great, very lasting luck, and it can be associated with people who are remembered in history for doing something great in a certain area. I think the author of Harry Potter has Mercury at the beginning of Virgo in conjunction with Regulus. And she spoke about having one day this incredible strike of inspiration when she got the idea to write Harry Potter. And, you know, being a writer, being governed by Mercury, being in Virgo, and Mercury being already exalted in Virgo, and Mercury being exalted in Virgo next to Regulus, one of the four royal stars, which gives a lot of fame and a lot of success, a lot of power. That is very consistent with what actually happened when she finally managed to publish the Harry Potter books. So Venus is not in as great of a condition. It's in trouble. It's in its fall. It might not produce something as beloved or as socially accepted, and something that's worldwide famous and accepted. It can produce more problematic things, but it can still give pretty good notoriety, or it can give fame, or it can give things which a normal person with Venus in Virgo wouldn't have access to. And there are many, many other ways in which planets can change condition if they are together with one of the centaurs, such as Chiron, but Nessus also can change a planet, especially by close proximity, a lot. The four asteroids can change it. I think for one planet being in all the, if you look at one planet and all the possibilities, all the possible scenarios it can be in a chart, through all the signs, through all the houses, being in aspect with all other planets and all other bodies and other points that we look at in astrology, I think that produces, I wrote here, over 2 million possible conditions. So you have a lot of interpretations only for one planet if you want to thoroughly look at its condition. That is impossible, and I don't see how that would be possible to summarize or to write for someone. No matter how advanced technology gets, you can't really get to that point where you can explain things that accurately, right? So we're dealing with general interpretations, and this is why I felt it was important to add that disclaimer at the end, that I am doing my best to give you a natal chart reading as general as I can and as helpful and applicable as I can for your situation. However, there are always going to be some limitations. I think that is all for the natal chart reading, and thank you for watching this video.